Blood, panic, sirens. A Mafia boss is on his knees, his only son's life slipping away in a hospital where every doctor's failed. Money can't save him. Power can't save him. Not even fear can. And then she walks in, a young black woman, the daughter of a cleaning lady, carrying nothing but her mind, her courage, and a truth she refuses to hide. They laugh at her. They tell her to step aside. But what happens next will silence an entire room and change the course of 2 lives forever. Because when the world doubted her, she didn't fight back with anger. She fought back with brilliance. This is a story of how a woman no one believed in did what no one else could. How a cleaning lady's daughter saved the son of a Mafia boss, and in doing so, saved something far greater, humanity. Stay till the end, because this story will remind you that your background doesn't define your destiny. Your choices do. Welcome to Brainfuel, where real stories ignite your mind and move your heart. Here, we don't just tell stories. We uncover the power inside people who refuse to give up. So hit subscribe, stay inspired, and remember, one moment of courage can change everything. Blood, panic, sirens. That's all anyone could hear as chaos swallowed the night. The flashing red lights of an ambulance painted the wet New York streets in streaks of crimson. Tires screeched as paramedics threw open the hospital doors, shouting for help. On the gurney lay a young man, barely breathing, his body broken, his clothes soaked in blood. Car crash, severe internal bleeding, pulse dropping fast. One of the medics yelled, but when the attending nurse saw his face, she froze. Her clipboard slipped from her hands. The patient wasn't just any young man. It was Marco DeLuca, the only son of Don Vito DeLuca, one of the most feared Mafia bosses in New York City. Within minutes, word spread through the hospital like wildfire. The Don son was here and dying. Every nurse, every doctor, every intern who had ever heard the name DeLuca knew what that meant. The DeLuca family wasn't just powerful. They were untouchable. They owned nightclubs, shipping docks, even some of the city's politicians. When Don Vito wanted something, it got done by fear or by force. So when the doors of the emergency room slammed open and Don Vito himself stepped in, the air turned heavy. He was a tall man with silver hair slicked back, dressed in a black suit that looked almost too calm for the storm brewing inside him. His eyes, sharp, dark, and dangerous, scanned the room like a predator searching for weakness. "Where's my boy?" His voice was deep calm, but it carried a weight that made every spine in the room straighten. He's in critical condition," stammered Dr. Patel, the ER chief. "We're doing everything we can." Everything. Don Vito stepped closer. "Then why isn't he awake?" The nurse beside the monitor whispered to another, "Oh my God, this can't be happening if that boy dies." They didn't finish the sentence. Everyone already knew. Inside the trauma bay, doctors surrounded Marco's body, their hands moving fast, their words overlapping. His ribs were shattered, one lung collapsing, and blood was pooling his abdomen faster than they could drain it. Pressure's dropping. "He's losing too much blood. We need to open him up now." They rushed to stabilize him. But when they tried to locate the source of internal bleeding, the monitors began to scream. Something was wrong, very wrong. Dr. Patel, usually composed and confident, pulled off his gloves in frustration. "It's too deep. We can't reach it without risking the aorta. We need a vascular specialist." "Page Dr. Reynolds," someone yelled. Moments later, the top surgeon in the hospital, Dr. Reynolds, appeared. His reputation was legendary, but even legends have limits. He studied the scans, his brow furrowing. "This is a nightmare. The bleeding's behind the pancreas. If I touch it wrong, he's gone." Outside the glass walls, Don Vito watched every move. His bodyguards lined the hallway, their suits tight, their faces stone cold. One of them leaned in and murmured, "Boss, they're saying it's complicated." Don Vito didn't respond. He just kept watching, his jaw tightening with every beep of the heart monitor. Finally, Dr. Reynolds stepped out, his face pale. "We've done what we can, but the damage, it's too extensive. If we operate, he might not survive the surgery. I'm sorry." Silence. The hallway went so quiet you could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Then, slowly, Don Vito turned to face him. His voice came out low, almost whispering. "You're telling me my son dies tonight?" Reynolds swallowed hard. "We'll keep him comfortable, sir, but there's nothing." Before he could finish, Don Vito's hand slammed against the wall with such force that the nurses jumped. His eyes burned with fury and heartbreak. "Nothing? You call yourself doctors, and the only thing you could do is watch him die." He pointed toward the ER. "That's my only son. I gave the city everything it wanted: money, favors, protection, and this is how it repays me." The staff stood frozen. No one dared move. Everyone knew. When the Don's temper exploded, lives were ruined. Dr. Patel tried to reason with him. "Mr. DeLuca, please, we're doing our best." "Your best isn't good enough." Don Vito roared. "If my boy dies, none of you leave this hospital alive." The room fell into utter silence. Even the machines seemed to hold their breath. In that moment, fear replaced reason. The surgeons glanced at one another, torn between their duty and the unspoken threat hanging over them. One doctor quietly slipped out, muttering, "I'm not dying for this." Another followed, then another. Within minutes, the top specialists in the hospital had vanished into the halls, leaving behind trembling nurses and a dying boy. Don Vito turned, looking through the glass at his son, pale, unconscious, fighting for life. For the first time in years, the Don's expression softened. He reached out a hand and pressed it against the glass, whispering, "Hold on, Marco. Don't you dare leave me." But deep down, he could feel it. Time was running out. In the control room, alarms began to blare again. Marco's pulse dropped. The nurses scrambled, their voices rising in panic. "BP is crashing. He's coding. We're losing him." A defibrillator was wheeled in, and the charge built with a rising hum. Clear. Shock. His body jolted. No response. Clear. Another shock. Still nothing. The nurse's eyes filled with tears. "He's not coming back." Don Vito's bodyguards shifted uneasily, watching their boss's face twist in anguish. For the first time, the man who ruled the city felt utterly powerless. And then, just as all hope seemed gone, the ER doors opened again. A young woman in light blue scrubs stood there, clutching a folder, her eyes wide but determined. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't even part of the surgical team. Her name was Maya Johnson, a 24-year-old medical intern and the daughter of the hospital's cleaning lady. She had no idea that in the next few hours, her name would shake the world and change her life forever. Her name was Maya Johnson, and she had no business being anywhere near the chaos that night. She wasn't a senior doctor. She wasn't even a resident. She was just an intern, a name buried in the hospital's long list of trainees who came and went without anyone remembering their faces. But if there was one thing Maya had learned from her mother, it was that being invisible didn't mean you were powerless. That evening had started like any other. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of disinfectant filled the halls. Her mother, Elaine Johnson, was pushing her cleaning cart to the corridors of St. Gabriel's Hospital, humming softly to herself. Her hands were calloused, her back sore, but her spirit unbreakable. For 20 years, she had cleaned those same floors, emptied those same bins, and watched doctors walk past her without so much as a glance. Yet, every time she looked at her daughter, she saw her own dream reborn. "One day, baby," she'd say, "you won't be the one cleaning up after them. You'll be the one saving lives." And Maya had promised her, "I'll make you proud, Mama." That night, Maya had stayed late, studying in the staff lounge. Her notebook was open to a diagram of the vascular system. She was preparing for a research presentation the next day. She'd been fascinated by rare internal bleeding cases, especially ones involving the pancreas and arteries. Cases so dangerous that most surgeons refused to touch them. Little did she know she was about to face one herself. A loud crash of footsteps echoed to the hall, followed by the blare of an intercom. Code red, Trauma Bay 1. All available surgeons to the ER immediately. Maya's head shot up. She peeked into the hallway. Nurses ran past her like a flood. Then she saw her mother pushing her cart out of the way, eyes wide with worry. "What's happening?" Maya asked. Elaine shook her head. "They said it's some VIP, someone big. Everyone's panicking." Moments later, an armed man in a black suit stormed past. That's when Maya noticed the tattoos on his neck, the kind that spelled trouble. "Mama," she whispered, "that's not just a VIP. That's Mafia." Her mother grabbed her arm. "Stay out of sight, Maya. You hear me? This isn't our business." But it was too late. From where she stood, Maya could see the chaos through the glass doors of the trauma bay. Doctors shouting, machines beeping, a man on the table barely clinging to life. And right outside the glass stood Don Vito DeLuca, the man whose name even the police whispered. The same man whose son was now dying, and whose anger could destroy this entire hospital. Maya's stomach twisted. She watched as one doctor after another backed away from the operating table. "We can't risk it," one muttered. "If something goes wrong, we're finished." Her heart sank. The patient, Marco, was young, barely older than her. His face was pale, his body still. And in that moment, Maya saw something no one else did, a human being, not a gangster's son. She looked at the monitors, her mind instantly processing the data, the pulse, the oxygen level, the blood pressure. The signs all pointed to one thing: internal vascular rupture, likely behind the pancreas. It was exactly what she'd studied just hours ago. Her pulse quickened. Her instincts screamed at her to do something. But she was an intern. Just an intern. "Maya." Her mother hissed, seeing her inch closer. "Don't even think about it. These people, they're dangerous." "I know," Maya whispered. "But he's dying, Mama, and no one's helping him." She took a deep breath. Her brain raced through every piece of research she'd ever read, every note she'd written. She remembered an experimental method, a micro-clamp bypass technique that could stop the bleeding without fully opening the abdomen. It hadn't been widely used yet, but she'd studied it obsessively. Her mother grabbed her sleeve again. "Please, baby, don't. This isn't our fight." But Maya's heart wouldn't let her walk away. "If I don't, he dies," she said quietly. With her hands trembling, she walked toward the trauma bay door. The guards turned immediately, blocking her path. One of them barked, "Authorized personnel only." Maya stood her ground. "Then get authorization." The entire room turned toward her. Dr. Patel's eyes widened. "Maya, what are you doing here?" "I know what's happening inside," she said, her voice shaking but steady. "The bleeding's behind the pancreas, isn't it?" Dr. Patel blinked. "How do you know that?" "Because I've studied it. There's a technique." "This isn't the time for theory," snapped Dr. Reynolds, glaring at her. "You're an intern. You don't give orders here." Don Vito's voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Who is she?" The room went still. "She's an intern," Dr. Patel said reluctantly. "She's not qualified for..." The Don's eyes locked on Maya. "You say you know how to save him?" Maya swallowed. I can try." Dr. Reynolds threw up his hands. "Try. You'll kill him." Don Vito turned his head slightly, and his bodyguards tensed. "Every so-called expert in this room said the same thing," he said coldly. "They'd rather do nothing than try." He looked back at Maya. "At least this one has courage." He stepped closer to her, his voice lowering. "If you're lying, girl, if you fail..." Maya met his gaze without flinching. "Then I fail trying. But I won't stand by and watch him die." The Don studied her for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he nodded once. "Do it. You're in charge." Gasps filled the room. Nurses froze. Dr. Patel's mouth fell open. "Sir, you can't possibly..." "I said she's in charge," the Don thundered. Maya's heart pounded. She turned to the staff. "I'll need access to the surgical lab, clamps, and 2 units of O-negative blood. Now." No one moved at first. Then, seeing Don Vito's glare, they scrambled into action. Elaine, still standing near the door, watched in disbelief as her daughter walked toward the operating room, toward the very heart of danger. "Maya," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please come back." But Maya didn't turn around. She couldn't, because for the first time in her life, the daughter of a cleaning lady wasn't standing on the sidelines. She was standing at the center of the storm, and the fate of a Mafia prince now rested entirely in her hands. And deep down, though fear clawed at her chest, a single thought burned in her mind. Maybe this is what I was born to do. For a few seconds, the entire room froze. No one breathed. The only sound was a steady beep of the heart monitor, a slow, fading rhythm that reminded everyone that time was slipping away. Dr. Reynolds, the senior surgeon, looked at Maya as if she'd just spoken another language. "You're an intern," he repeated, disbelief dripping from every syllable. "You don't give orders. You don't touch a patient without clearance. You!" Don Vito's voice cut through him like a blade. "She said she can save my son." Reynolds hesitated. His lips parted, but no words came out. The Don turned his piercing gaze on him. "Can you save him, doctor?" Reynolds didn't answer. He couldn't. The scans, the vitals, the blood loss, everything pointed to the same conclusion. Marco wouldn't make it through the night. "That's what I thought," Don Vito said coldly. He shifted his eyes back to Maya, his tone calm but terrifying. "Then she's the one I'm listening to." Every doctor in the room stiffened. A few nurses exchanged panicked looks. An intern, barely out of school, was about to operate on the son of a Mafia boss. If she failed, no one knew what would happen. But one thing was clear. Don Vito's word was final. Maya swallowed hard. The room felt smaller now, the air heavier. Her heart thundered against her ribs, but her voice stayed steady. "If you want me to save him, you have to trust me completely. No one interferes. No shouting. No second-guessing. Just follow my instructions." Dr. Patel looked like he was about to faint. "This is madness. You can't." "Do it," Don Vito said, his voice low but sharp. "Do exactly what she says." The tension was so thick it was suffocating. Even the machine seemed to fall silent, as if the hospital itself was holding its breath. Maya turned to the nurses. "I need full surgical prep now. Sterile fields, suction clamps, and O-negative blood on standby. And someone page anesthesia." The nurses moved instantly, their training kicking in even though their minds were spinning. Dr. Reynolds, still fuming, stepped closer. "Do you have any idea what you're risking? You'll be expelled. You'll lose your license before you even get one." Maya didn't look up. "If I don't try, he'll lose his life before he even gets a chance to live." Her calm defiance shocked him. Reynolds wanted to argue, but when he looked through a glass and saw Don Vito staring straight at them, unblinking, unreadable, he backed off. The Don stepped closer to Maya. "What's your name, girl?" "Maya. Maya Johnson." His brow furrowed slightly. "You look familiar." "My mother works here," she said quietly. "She's one of the cleaning staff." Something flickered in the Don's eyes. Curiosity, maybe even respect. "A cleaning lady's daughter," he said slowly, almost to himself. Then louder. "And tonight, you'll be the only person in this building with courage." He straightened his jacket and turned toward his guards. "No one leaves. No one interferes. She gets whatever she asks for." And with that, he stepped aside, giving her the stage, or more accurately, the battlefield. Maya turned to face the glass doors of the operating room. She could see her reflection, her wide brown eyes, her trembling hands, her scrub cap slightly crooked. She looked terrified. But inside, she felt something else burning, purpose. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Courage isn't about not being scared, baby. It's about doing what's right, even when you are." She took one last deep breath, pushed open the doors, and stepped inside. The surgical lights blazed down, blindingly bright. The smell of blood and antiseptic filled the air. Marco's body lay motionless on the table, his skin pale, his chest rising faintly with each mechanical breath. His pulse was fading, a weak, fragile rhythm. "Scalpel," Maya said softly. The nurse hesitated, then placed it in her hand. Her fingers wrapped around the cold metal. She exhaled, steadying her nerves. Retractors. The team moved like clockwork, though the disbelief on their faces never faded. They couldn't understand how someone so young, so untested, could be so composed in a moment like this. But Maya wasn't guessing. Every movement was guided by memory. The research papers she'd read late at night, the anatomy models she dissected, the quiet hours she'd spent visualizing surgeries she was never allowed to perform. She worked with surgical precision, her hands small but sure. Sweat formed on her forehead, but her voice remained calm. Clamp, suction pressure here. At first, the team thought she was stalling. Then they realized she wasn't. Her instructions were exact. Her decisions bold but calculated. She was stabilizing the patient in ways most interns wouldn't even dare to attempt. Outside the glass, Don Vito watched silently. He didn't understand medicine, but he recognized confidence when he saw it. The girl wasn't guessing. She was fighting. Dr. Reynolds stood beside him, arms crossed, muttering under his breath. If she fails, it's her funeral. Literally. Don Vito didn't look away from the operating table. Then let's hope she's as good as she thinks. Minutes passed. The monitors screamed. Maya's mind raced. She was getting closer to the source of the bleeding, but it was exactly where she feared. Deep behind the pancreas, wrapped in a web of fragile arteries. One wrong move, and it would all be over. Her hands trembled for a moment. The nurse noticed. Maya, his blood pressure's dropping fast. Maya's voice was low, steady, clamp ready. On my mark now. The nurse obeyed, and suddenly, the bleeding slowed. The monitor beeped faster. She'd found it. A small rupture, deadly but fixable. Maya's training, her memory, and her instinct fused together in perfect focus. She applied a micro-clamp technique she'd practiced only on synthetic models. Every second mattered. Outside, Don Vito's hand gripped the railing. His knuckles turned white. "Come on, kid," he muttered under his breath. "Don't quit on me." Then, for the first time in hours, the steady beep of the heart monitor evened out. The flatline threat disappeared. The young man's pulse stabilized. Faint but steady. Maya didn't celebrate. She just whispered, "He's not out of danger yet. We keep going." Dr. Patel wiped his forehead. "She's actually doing it," he murmured. By the end of the first hour, everyone in the room, the same people who doubted her, now followed her every command without question. The hierarchy had shifted. The intern was now the leader. And outside, Don Vito De Luca, a man who had built his empire through fear, stood quietly, watching the daughter of a cleaning lady do what all his money and power could not. Fight death itself with courage and compassion. Maya rushed to scrub in, her heart beat louder than the chaos around her. The entire hospital seemed to be holding its breath. Doctors whispering, nurses exchanging stunned glances, guards standing like statues. They all knew what was at stake. Inside that sterile prep room, Maya stared at her reflection in the mirror. Beneath the harsh fluorescent light, her face looked pale, but her eyes, they burned with something fierce. Determination, fear, courage, everything at once. Her hands trembled as she tied her mask. "You've trained for this. You've studied for this. Now prove it." Behind her, the door creaked open. "Maya." Her mother's voice was soft but shaking. Elaine stood there still in her janitor's uniform, a bucket and mop forgotten in the hallway. Tears were already forming in her eyes. "Baby, you don't have to do this. You hear me? You don't owe them nothing." Maya turned, her gloved hands halfway raised. "Mama, that boy's dying. Nobody else is going to step up." Elaine's voice cracked. "These people don't care about us, Maya. They'll let you take the fall if anything goes wrong." Maya stepped forward, her tone gentle but firm. "I know, but if I walk away and he dies, I'll have to live with that. And I can't." Elaine shook her head, her eyes glistening. "You're my whole world, baby. I worked my whole life, so you wouldn't have to fight battles like this." Maya smiled behind her mask. "You worked your whole life teaching me how to fight. You just didn't know it." Elaine pressed a trembling hand against her daughter's cheek. "You remember what I told you?" Maya nodded. "Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right, even when you are." Her mother's hand lingered for one last second. "Then go show them what courage looks like." Maya's eyes softened. "I love you, Mama." "I love you more," Elaine whispered. stepping back as the prep nurse called out, "Dr. Johnson, they're ready for you." The title Dr. Johnson sounded strange, almost foreign. She wasn't a doctor yet, not officially. But right now, none of that mattered. As Maya walked toward the oar, the hallway lights seemed to stretch forever. Every step echoed in her ears like a countdown. She could see Don Vito through the glass, pacing like a caged lion. His eyes locked on hers for a brief second, a wordless warning and plea wrapped into one look. When she pushed through the operating room doors, the world outside disappeared. The harsh lights flooded her vision. The metallic smell of blood filled her lungs. Machines beeped in chaotic rhythm. Nurses moved in controlled panic, and Marco, the patient, the son of the most feared man in New York, lay motionless beneath the blue surgical drape. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and the rise and fall of his chest was shallow, mechanical. The lead anesthesiologist glanced up. BP still low, oxygen saturation at 68. Maya's eyes scanned the monitors. Every beep, every number etched itself into her brain. She took a deep breath and slipped into a calm she didn't fully understand. It was like her body had entered another mode, one where fear existed, but far, far away. "Scalpel," she said quietly. The nurse hesitated for a split second before handing it to her. Maya took it, and time seemed to slow. The metal felt cool in her gloved hand. Her breath steadied. Her thoughts sharpened. For a moment, she was an intern or the daughter of a cleaning lady. She was a surgeon, and there was only one thing in the world that mattered: saving that life. "Incision," she murmured, her voice steady as she made the first cut. The team moved with her. One nurse dabbed away blood. Another suctioned gently. Maya's eyes darted across the field, searching for the source of the bleed. "Retractors," she ordered. As the wound opened, the damage came into full view. Torn tissue pooled blood, and deep inside, the source, a ruptured artery near the pancreas. It was worse than she thought. The staff around her began to whisper, "This is impossible. She can't reach it. We'll lose him." Maya ignored them. She couldn't afford doubt. Not theirs, not her own. "Clamp," she said. The nurse handed it over. Maya leaned in, her brow furrowing, sweat beginning to form under her mask. Her gloved hands moved delicately. Every millimeter mattered. Her mind flashed back to all those late nights in the university library, watching surgical videos, reading case studies from world-renowned doctors. One line from a paper echoed in her mind. The key to vascular rescue lies not in strength, but in stillness. So she became still. Perfectly, dangerously still. Outside their window, Elaine stood hidden behind the glass, a hand over her mouth. She wasn't supposed to be there, but no one dared tell her to leave. Her eyes never left her daughter. Every movement Maya made, every careful shift of the hand, made Elaine's heart stop and start again. Don Vito was there too, just a few feet away. His eyes, usually so cold, now burned with something else. Desperation, fear, hope. He watched this young woman work with the intensity of a general watching a war unfold. Inside, Maya's arms began to ache, but she refused to stop. "Suction here," she said softly. "Good. Hold it steady." Perfect. The bleeding slowed, but not enough. She needed another strategy. Her brain raced. She remembered a micro-bypass technique from an obscure Japanese journal, a method no one used because it was too risky, too precise. But she practiced it once in simulation and had never forgotten. "Forceps," she said, her tone sharp now. The nurse handed it over. "Doctor, that technique's—" "I know what I'm doing," Maya cut in. Her voice carried an authority that silenced the room. She maneuvered the clamp, then applied micro-pressure to a section most wouldn't dare touch. The monitor spiked, heart rate dropping, then stabilizing. Her breath caught. She did it. She found the artery. "Pressure steady," she whispered. "Now, suture." The nurse passed the thread, and Maya's fingers moved like she'd been doing her whole life. Each stitch was perfect, deliberate, and calm. Minutes passed, then an hour, then another. The surgery dragged on, but Maya never faltered. She worked like a woman possessed, fueled not by pride, but by purpose. Outside, Elaine whispered through tears, "That's my baby. That's my girl." And Don Vito, the man who once ruled the city with iron and fear, felt something he hadn't felt in decades: humility. When Maya finally looked up, her voice barely above a whisper, she said, "He's stable. For now." The room exhaled as one. The monitors showed a strong, steady heartbeat. The impossible had just been done. Maya removed her gloves slowly, her body trembling, her mind blank. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a nurse whispered, She did it!" Through the glass, Elaine began to cry. Don Vito just stood there, staring at the young woman who had faced death, and won. And though no one spoke it out loud, everyone in that room knew the truth. They had just witnessed something extraordinary. Not a miracle of luck, but a miracle of courage. The operating room was silent now. Machines hummed softly, the air thick with exhaustion and disbelief. Maya stood frozen for a moment, her gloved hands trembling above the table. The bright lights glared down on her like spotlights, illuminating every bead of sweat, every trace of blood on her scrubs. Then, heartbeat stable. The anesthesiologist whispered. The room exhaled. Shoulders dropped. Someone clapped quietly, almost afraid to break the spell. But Maya didn't move. She just stared at the monitor, watching the steady rhythm she had fought for, that single pulse that meant life. Her breath hitched. He's alive. Her vision blurred for a second. The adrenaline that had fueled her for hours suddenly began to drain away, leaving her knees weak. "Dr. Johnson?" A nurse asked softly. "Are you all right?" Maya blinked, nodding faintly. Yes, I'm fine." Her voice cracked halfway through. She handed off her instruments one by one, her movements automatic now. The nurses began cleaning up, murmuring to each other. Some couldn't stop glancing at her. The young black intern who had done what a team of world-class surgeons could not. When she finally stepped out of the OR, the hallway hit her like a wave. The noise, the voices, the flashing lights from a Mafia entourage outside. It all came rushing back. Don Vito was standing there, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes red. For a man known to be untouchable, he looked shockingly human, vulnerable, even. The moment he saw her, he froze. Maya pulled off her mask and cap, revealing her sweat-matted curls. She looked utterly drained but unbroken. Her gaze met his, and for a few seconds, no one dared to speak. Finally, Maya whispered, "He's alive? The worst is over." Don Vito's chest rose sharply. He blinked, like he hadn't fully processed her words. "Alive?" She nodded once. "He's going to make it. He'll need recovery time, but your son's alive." The old man's lips parted, but no sound came out. His guard behind him exchanged confused glances. They had never seen their boss speechless. And then something remarkable happened. Don Vito, the same man who had men kneel before him in fear, stepped forward, removed his hat, and said quietly, "Thank you." 2 simple words. But coming from him, they carried the weight of a lifetime. Maya didn't respond at first. She was too tired to think, too overwhelmed to even move. He took another step closer. "What you did in there," he shook his head slowly. "No one else could have. They said he was gone. That my boy didn't stand a chance. And then you," he paused, searching for the right word, "you gave him back to me." Maya swallowed hard, unsure what to say. "I just did my job." He stared at her, almost incredulous. "Your job." His voice softened, almost breaking. "Miss, you just did the impossible." Behind Maya, the hospital staff stood watching in stunned silence. The same people who had doubted her, who whispered that she didn't belong there, now couldn't even meet her eyes. From the corner, Elaine appeared, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. She had seen everything from behind the glass. The mop in her hand clattered to the floor as she ran to her daughter. "Maya!" she cried, wrapping her arms around her. "Oh, baby, you did it. You really did it." Maya melted into her embrace, her voice muffled. "He's alive, Mama. He's going to be okay." Elaine pulled back, cupping her daughter's face. "I'm so proud of you." Don Vito watched the 2 women, something shifting in his expression. For the first time in his life, he looked unsure, humbled. He stepped forward again. "Miss Johnson," he said quietly, "you said you just did your job. But what you did was more than medicine." Maya looked at him. Puzzled, he gestured to her mother. "You saved my son's life, but maybe you saved mine too." Elaine frowned. "How you figure that?" Don Vito sighed deeply. "You spend your life building walls, thinking power will protect you. Then one day, your world collapses, and the only person who can help you is someone you would have never even noticed." He looked down, almost ashamed. "That changes a man." The hall fell silent again. Even his guard seemed uncomfortable, as if witnessing something sacred. Maya finally found her voice. "I didn't do it for power or for you. I did it because no one else would. Because I couldn't watch someone die when I knew I could help." Don Vito nodded slowly. "And that's what makes you different." He turned to his men and said firmly, "No one touches these two women. Ever. From this day on, they're under my protection." Maya blinked. "That's not necessary." He raised a hand. "It's not a favor. It's a debt, and I always pay my debts." Elaine squeezed Maya's hand tightly. "Let it be, baby. Let the man say his piece." For a moment, Don Vito just looked at them. The brilliant young surgeon in training, and her mother, a hospital cleaner with eyes full of pride. Then he said something no one expected. "Tell me, Miss Johnson, what do you want?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "Anything," he said. "A house, a scholarship, a car, you name it. You saved my son. I'll make sure you never want for anything again." Maya stared at him, then at her mother, who simply shrugged. "You earned it, baby." But Maya shook her head. "All I want is a chance. A real chance to become a surgeon. Not because someone owed me a favor, but because I earned it." Don Vito smiled faintly, something almost fatherly in his eyes. "You already did, kid." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a card. "If anyone ever stands in your way again, you call me. Understand?" Maya took it hesitantly. "I don't plan on calling." He chuckled softly. "That's what makes me like you even more." As he turned to leave, he paused beside Elaine and whispered, "You raised a lioness." Elaine's lips trembled. "No, sir," she said proudly. "I just raised my daughter." Don Vito gave her a small nod and walked away, flanked by his men. The hallway cleared in seconds, leaving Maya and her mother standing in the quiet aftermath. For the first time in hours, Maya allowed herself to breathe. Elaine brushed her hair gently. "You okay, sweetheart?" Maya smiled tiredly. "Yeah, I think I'm more than okay." As they walked down the hall together, the nurses and doctors who once doubted her now stepped aside in silent awe. And though she didn't say out loud, Maya knew something deep in her heart. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something much bigger. By morning, the hospital had transformed into a battlefield of flashing cameras, murmured gossip, and chaos that no one could contain. Word had spread like wildfire, not through official reports, but through whispers. The Johnson girls saved him. The Mafia boss's son, alive because of a cleaning lady's daughter. And in turn did what a dozen top surgeons couldn't. In every corner, people were talking. Nurses huddled around the coffee station. Orderlies whispered in hallways, and the head of surgery paced his office like a man walking a tightrope. And in the middle of it all was Maya. She hadn't slept in 20 hours. Her scrubs were still creased, her hair tied back in a messy bun. But when she stepped into the hospital lobby that morning, every conversation stopped. Heads turned. Some people looked at her with awe, others with envy, and a few with resentment. One of the senior doctors, Dr. Harris, crossed his arms and muttered under his breath, "She got lucky. That's all." But luck didn't stitch arteries or steady trembling hands for hours. Luck didn't defy science and bring a man back from the brink of death. Still, Maya didn't respond. She walked straight past the murmurs, her head high, her expression calm. Outside, reporters were camped out by the entrance. Microphones waved in the air like weapons. Cameras clicked nonstop. "Miss Johnson, is it true you operated without authorization? How did you know what to do? What did Don Vito promise you? She tried to keep walking, but the questions rained down faster and louder. Elaine appeared from behind her, wrapping an arm protectively around her daughter's shoulders. That's enough. Y'all give her some space. Security finally stepped in, pushing the crowd back, but not before someone shouted, "They say you're the daughter of a janitor. Is that true?" Maya stopped, slowly turned. "Yes," she said clearly, "and I'm proud of it." The reporters froze. Even the cameras hesitated. "My mom may clean floors," Maya continued, "but she raised me to walk on them with purpose. So yeah, I'm her daughter, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." Then she walked away, her mother right beside her, as the crowd stood stunned. Inside, Don Vito was sitting by his son's bedside. Marco's color had returned, faint but steady. The old man's eyes softened when he saw Maya enter. "She's here," he said quietly, motioning for his men to step aside. Maya walked closer, checking the monitors like it was second nature. "He's improving," she said. "Vitals are stable. His body's responding better than expected." Don Vito nodded. "He'll want to thank you himself when he wakes." Maya smiled faintly. "He doesn't have to." But Don Vito leaned forward. "You don't understand. My son's alive because of you, and the world needs to know your name." She hesitated. "That's not why I did it." "I know," he said. "That's exactly why people should hear it." He picked up his phone, dialing someone. Maya turned to leave, but paused when she heard him say, "Yes. Tell them the truth. The girl's name is Maya Johnson, and she's the reason my son's breathing." Her stomach twisted. "You didn't have to." He raised a hand. "You earned this, Miss Johnson. The world just forgot how to recognize real heroes. Maybe it's time to remind them." An hour later, it happened. Her name exploded across every news outlet. Intern performs miracle surgery. Unknown student saves Mafia boss's son. Daughter of cleaning lady defies odds. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, messages, interview requests. Even her old college classmates who never spoke to her were suddenly so proud. But Maya didn't celebrate. She sat quietly in the hospital garden, the morning sun warm on her face, her scrub stained, her mind spinning. Her mother joined her, holding 2 coffees. "You should be proud, baby." "I don't know what to feel," Maya said softly. "It doesn't feel real." Elaine sat beside her. "That's because it ain't fame you wanted. You just wanted to help." Maya smiled weakly. "Exactly." For a moment, they sat in silence, the chaos of the world fading away. Then, out of nowhere, a familiar voice called out, "Maya Johnson?" She turned to see the hospital's chief of surgery, Dr. Patel, standing there with a tight smile. "Dr. Patel," Maya said, standing quickly, "I was just—" He raised a hand. "Relax, Miss Johnson. You're not in trouble." Her brow furrowed. "I'm not." He chuckled. "Not this time. The board just met. After what you did last night, they look foolish calling it a violation. You saved a patient everyone else gave up on. The board decided to adjust the rules." Maya blinked. "Adjust the rules?" "You're being promoted," he said simply. "Effective immediately. You'll be working under me in advanced surgical training." Maya's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious." He gave a small nod. "And between us, you've made this hospital famous overnight." He turned to leave, but added quietly, "Don't let it change you." Maya stood frozen. Her mother's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "See? All them nights you stayed up studying, all them shifts you worked, it's paying off." But Maya didn't smile. "Not yet. Mama, it doesn't feel like it's over. It feels like it's just starting." And she was right, because by that evening, the hospital was flooded with visitors, journalists, donors, even government officials. Everyone wanted to meet the miracle girl. But Maya was in the spotlight. She was in the recovery ward, checking on Marco. He was awake now, pale but smiling weakly. "You're the doctor who saved me?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "Not a doctor. Not yet." He chuckled faintly. Well, whatever you are, thank you. Maya smiled. You're welcome. Just don't make me do that again. He laughed, a weak, grateful sound that filled the room with life. From the doorway, Don Vito watched silently. His eyes glistened. He wasn't used to tears, but this time he didn't hide them. When Maya left the room, he followed her. You got something rare, Miss Johnson, he said quietly. You heal people, not just with your hands, but with your heart. Don't ever lose that. She nodded. I won't. As she walked down the hall, the evening sun spilled through the windows, bathing everything in golden light. Every nurse who passed smiled. Every orderly nodded. Every doctor who once ignored her now looked at her differently. Not as a janitor's daughter, but as a woman who changed everything. For the first time in her life, Maya Johnson felt seen. Not because of fame, not because of fear, but because of respect. And deep down, she knew this was just the beginning of her story. The world had just met Maya Johnson, and she was just getting started. By the end of the week, Maya Johnson's face was everywhere. Her photo, tired, still in scrubs, standing outside the hospital with her mother, had gone viral. Headlines called her the miracle intern, the genius who defied the system, and the cleaning lady's daughter who saved a Mafia prince. Talk shows debated her story. Some called her a hero. Others accused her of breaking medical protocol. But to most people, she was a symbol. Proof that brilliance can come from anywhere, even from the daughter of a woman who scrubbed hospital floors for a living. The world loved her, at least at first. It began with invitations, morning shows, podcasts, interviews. Big pharmaceutical companies sent her gifts. Universities offered to sponsor her research. A billionaire philanthropist even called, saying he wanted to mentor her personally. Maya's inbox flooded. Every notification felt like another door opening. But not everyone was celebrating. Inside the hospital, the air had shifted. The same colleagues who once ignored her now watched her every move with suspicion. The senior surgeons whispered about her behind closed doors. She broke protocol, one said. She made the hospital look reckless, another added. She's an intern, not a hero. The jealousy spread faster than her fame. One afternoon, while reviewing a patient file, Maya overheard two doctors talking in the hallway. She's getting special treatment because of that Mafia connection. One sneered. She's not even certified for that kind of surgery. The other muttered. If it weren't for Don Vito's influence, she'd have been suspended. Maya froze. Her hands tightened around the file. She wanted to walk out and defend herself, but something stopped her. Instead, she took a deep breath, looked back at the patient chart, and whispered to herself, "Let the work speak." That night, she stayed in the lab long after everyone left. The hum of machines was the only sound. She studied new surgical techniques, annotated case studies, and reviewed her notes. Her goal wasn't fame, it was mastery. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, things were heating up. Don Vito's men now lingered around the building, ensuring no harm came to the Johnson women. The media spun this into another spectacle. Is the Mafia protecting the miracle intern? Elaine hated the attention. Cameras followed her even while she worked. One evening, she came home to find Maya sitting by the window, reading a medical journal. "Maya," she said gently, setting down her cleaning bag. "You've got the world talking about you, but you barely sleep." Maya smiled faintly. "It's just noise, Mama. It'll fade. What matters is what I do next." Elaine frowned. "Just promise me you won't lose yourself in all this. Fame don't fill your soul, baby. It just feeds other people's hunger." Maya closed the book. "I promise." But even as she said it, she could feel the pressure closing in. The next morning, she was summoned to the administrative boardroom, a long table surrounded by the hospital's most powerful figures. Dr. Patel was there, as well as several department heads, lawyers, and representatives from the press office. "Maya," the chairwoman began, her tone polite but distant, "you've brought unprecedented attention to this hospital. Donations are pouring in. Our reputation has never been higher. But there are also concerns." Maya frowned. "Concerns?" Dr. Harris, the same man who doubted her from day one. Lean forward. You violated multiple procedural rules. You performed a high-risk operation without authorization. If that patient had died, this hospital would be ruined. Maya stayed calm. But he didn't die. That's not the point, Harris snapped. You gamble with a life. Dr. Patel interjected. Enough. She made a judgment call, and it worked. We should be learning from her, not condemning her. The room erupted in quiet murmurs. The chairwoman tapped her pen. We've decided to review your residency eligibility. Until then, you'll continue under supervision. But any future violations and you're out. Understood. Maya nodded. Understood. As she walked out of the boardroom, cameras flashed again. Reporters shouted her name. She smiled faintly for the cameras, but inside, her heart was heavy. It was the first time she realized. Saving a life had made her famous, but fame had also painted a target on her back. That night, Don Vito called her personally. Maya. His deep voice rumbled through the phone. You look tired. She laughed softly. You sound like my mother. She's a smart woman, he said. Listen, the world's watching you now. You need to be careful. Power makes people dangerous. Maya hesitated. You mean the doctors? I mean everyone, he said quietly. The media builds heroes just to tear them down. Don't let them decide your story. His words stayed with her long after the call ended. Over the next few days, the attention grew relentless. Some called her a pioneer. Others claimed she was a fraud. A famous talk show even invited her, and then ambushed her with critics questioning her credentials. When the episode aired, the internet split in two. Hashtag Team Maya trended worldwide, fans praising her brilliance, her humility, her courage. But under the same hashtag were trolls calling her reckless, arrogant, and lucky. Maya tried not to read the comments, but one night, curiosity got the best of her. She scrolled through hundreds of posts, praise, hate, love, lies, all mixed together. Her mother found her sitting in the dark, phone glowing in her hand. Elaine sighed and took it gently away. You can't control what they say, baby. You can only control what you do. Maya nodded slowly. Then I'll just keep doing what I do best. The next morning, she arrived at the hospital before sunrise. No cameras, no noise, just silence. She slipped into the operating prep room, tied her mask, and whispered to herself, let's save another life. In that moment, the world outside didn't matter. Not the fame, not the hate, not the politics. Because Maya Johnson wasn't here for glory. She was here for purpose. And deep down, she knew. Storms would come, people would doubt, but she'd keep doing what her mother taught her from day one. Do the work. Stay humble. Let your heart guide your hands. And with that, she stepped back into the oar, where miracles didn't depend on who you were, but on how much courage you had when no one else believed. Weeks passed, and Maya Johnson's life turned into something she barely recognized. Everywhere she went, eyes followed her. Patients smiled. Reporters lingered outside. Even strangers on the street whispered her name. But inside the hospital, things were different. The tension was no longer hidden. It was thick in the air, heavy with envy, fear, and unspoken resentment. Doctors who once greeted her warmly now avoided her. Meetings turned cold. Every minor mistake was suddenly serious. One afternoon, Dr. Harris cornered her outside the operating theater. Enjoying your fame? He sneered. You think you're some kind of celebrity doctor now? Maya stayed calm. No, sir. I'm just trying to do my job. He smirked. Then maybe try doing it quietly. This isn't a circus. It's a hospital. She wanted to respond, but she remembered Don Vito's warning. Power makes people dangerous. So she simply nodded and walked away. But behind her, Harris muttered, she won't last long. That evening, while reviewing patient charts, Maya noticed something strange. Several surgery approvals had been rerouted without her knowledge, including cases she had been assigned. When she checked the logs, her name had been quietly removed from the records. Someone was trying to erase her. She reported it to Dr. Patel, but he sighed. I've been hearing rumors, Maya. They're saying your success was engineered. Engineered? She repeated, frowning. Patel looked uneasy. They think Don Vito pulled strings to protect you, that the operation wasn't pure luck, that the Mafia funded the equipment used that night. Maya's heart dropped. That's not true. I know, Patel said softly, but perception matters more than truth in places like this. That night, she went home and found her mother sitting on the porch, reading a newspaper. Elaine looked up. You're all over the news again. They're saying you might be investigated. Maya sat beside her, exhausted. Mama, I don't even know what's real anymore. Everyone's twisting everything. Her mother squeezed her hand. Then you stay rooted in what's real, baby. Your work, your heart. Maya nodded, but the words barely settled before headlights flashed outside the house. A black car rolled up. 2 men stepped out, the same men she recognized from the hospital parking lot. Don Vito's men. Miss Johnson, one said politely. Mr. Vito requests a meeting. It's important. Elaine's eyes widened. Maya, you don't know that man anything. Maya hesitated. Mama, if I don't go, things might get worse. So she went. The car drove her across the city, through narrow streets until it stopped at a quiet villa overlooking the harbor. Inside, Don Vito sat at a long wooden table, sipping espresso. He looked older, paler. The surgery had saved his life, but his eyes carried the weight of something deeper. Power that never really rests. Maya, he said warmly, gesturing to the seat across from him. Sit. She did. I hear people are giving you trouble, he began. She managed a tired smile. Comes with the territory, I guess. He studied her for a moment, then leaned forward. You did a good thing. You saved me. And I meant it when I said I'd protect you. I don't need protection, she said firmly. I just need peace. Don Vito chuckled softly. Peace is expensive in this world, my dear. And people don't like when someone like you, a young woman from nowhere, climbs too fast. They'll call it luck. They'll call it corruption. But they'll never call it what it is, talent. Maya sighed. They can think what they want. I just want to work. He nodded slowly. Then let me give you an opportunity. I'm opening a new medical foundation. Clean money. Real charity. I want you to lead it. She blinked. Lead it. He smiled. Yes, your name will inspire trust. You'll help people. And no one can touch you if you're under my protection. It sounded tempting. Safe. Powerful. But she knew the cost. Mr. Vito, she said carefully, I'm grateful for what you've done. But if I take your offer, I'll never be seen as a doctor again. Just a pawn. The room went silent. He looked at her for a long time, then nodded. You have courage. That's rare. But remember, the people in white coats can be more dangerous than men with guns. When Maya left the villa, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. She realized she was now walking a tightrope, between power and principle, between truth and survival. The next morning, when she entered the hospital, the whispers were louder. A new headline had dropped. The miracle intern's secret connection. Did the Mafia buy her success? Her photo filled the screen, side by side with Don Vito's. Within hours, the hospital's PR department called her in. Maya, this looks bad, the chairwoman said, rubbing her temples. We're facing donor pressure. The board is asking questions. So you believe them? Maya asked. It's not about belief. It's about optics. Dr. Patel tried to defend her, but the decision was already made. The board announced she was suspended pending investigation. Just like that, the same hospital that once celebrated her now turned its back. As Maya packed her things, nurses stopped to hug her quietly, some crying, others afraid to even make eye contact. When she walked out of the hospital gates, reporters swarmed her. Cameras flashed. Miss Johnson, did Don Vito fund her operation? Are you part of the Mafia? Is your license revoked? She didn't answer. She just kept walking, head high, silent, calm. When she got home, her mother opened the door and pulled her into a hug before she could say a word. I lost my job, Maya whispered. Elaine smiled gently. No, baby, you lost a place, not your purpose. Maya looked up, tears in her eyes. How do I fight something this big, Mama? Her mother's voice was steady. The same way I fought for you all those years. One day at a time. With faith, not fear. That night, as the city lights glimmered outside their window, Maya sat at her desk, not defeated, but determined. She opened her laptop and began drafting a research paper titled The Unseen Hands, Ethics and Courage in Crisis Medicine. If the system wanted to silence her, she'd make her voice too powerful to ignore. Because Maya Johnson wasn't done. They could take her job. They could twist her story. But they couldn't erase her truth. And deep inside, she knew the real fight was just beginning. Maya Johnson had lost everything. Her job, her reputation, and the respect of the very people who once praised her. But one thing they hadn't taken was her truth. In the days after her suspension, the silence around her home was loud. Her phone buzzed endlessly with missed calls. Reporters, former classmates, even strangers. Some called her a hero. Others called her fraud. She ignored them all. Instead, she sat in her small room with nothing but her mother's old laptop, a notebook filled with scribbled thoughts, and the same relentless fire that had carried her through every storm before. Each night she wrote, not to defend herself, but to expose something bigger. She titled her work The Hidden Pulse, How Power Controls Medicine. It wasn't just about her story. It was about all the stories like hers. People with talent, heart, and courage, silenced by those who feared being outshined. And in every line, she poured her anger, her heartbreak, and her hope. But the more she researched, the darker the truth became. She discovered that Dr. Harris, the same man who had accused her of corruption, had close financial ties with a private donor group. That group, as it turned out, was quietly funded by businesses linked to Don Vito. Her hands trembled as she connected the dots. It wasn't her who had been helped by the Mafia. It was them, the hospital board. The same people who'd crucified her in the name of ethics were benefiting from the very corruption they blamed her for. She looked at the documents again, disbelief turning to fury. They used me as a distraction, she whispered. They had needed someone to take the fall, someone disposable. And a young black intern from a working-class background was the perfect scapegoat. That night, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to hide anymore. She was going to fight back, but not with anger, not with violence, with truth. The next morning, Maya walked into a small cafe downtown, the same cafe she used to clean floors in during her student days. Behind the counter was Janelle, her childhood friend. "Girl, you look like you've seen a ghost," Janelle said. "You okay?" Maya smiled faintly. "I'm done hiding. I need your help." Janelle leaned in. "You're not thinking of doing something crazy, are you?" "Not crazy," Maya said. "Just honest." She opened her bag and showed her the printed documents, hospital memos, donation records, anonymous transfers, and photos linking the donors to Don Vito's company. Janelle's eyes widened. "You found all this yourself?" Maya nodded. "They blamed me for something they were doing behind closed doors. And now I'm going to show the world." Janelle grinned. "Then let's make some noise." They spent hours crafting a report, clear, detailed, undeniable. Janelle connected her to a friend who worked for an independent investigative journalist network known for exposing corruption. The next day, Maya sent everything, every piece of proof, to the journalist anonymously. For the first time in weeks, she felt peace. She had told the truth. Now the world would decide what to do with it. 3 days later, the headlines changed. Exposed. Mafia-linked donors found funding City Hospital Board. Whistleblower leak reveals secret payoffs. Investigation launched. Social media exploded. News anchors scrambled to confirm details. The hospital board was caught in the center of a scandal that threatened to collapse the entire institution. And while Maya's name wasn't mentioned directly, everyone knew where it started. That same afternoon, she received an unexpected call. "Miss Johnson?" The voice was calm, familiar. It was Don Vito. "Impressive work," he said. "You shook the system more than I ever could." "I didn't do it for revenge," she said. "I did it because it was right." He laughed softly. "You really believe in right and wrong, don't you?" "I do," she replied, "even if no one else does." He paused. Be careful, Maya. People who expose truth often end up buried under it. She hung up without replying, because she wasn't afraid anymore. Within a week, government auditors arrived at the hospital. Board members resigned. Dr. Harris was suspended pending investigation, and the story of the miracle intern took on a new meaning. This time, the world saw Maya not as a scandal, but as a symbol. News outlets began calling again, asking for interviews. She refused most of them, but one stood out, a request from the National Medical Forum, a global conference of doctors and innovators. They wanted her to speak about ethics and courage in medicine. Maya hesitated. She was no longer a doctor in uniform. No title, no lab coat, just herself. But her mother's words echoed in her mind. They can take your job, not your purpose. So she accepted. The night before her speech, she stood backstage, staring at the glowing lights and rows of seats. Her heart raced. For a moment, she thought of walking away. But then she heard her name announced. She stepped up to the podium, looked out at the sea of faces, doctors, students, leaders, and began to speak. When I was a little girl, she said, her voice steady, I watched my mother scrub floors in hospitals where no one even knew her name. She'd smile and tell me, do your best, even if no one's watching. And I did, until one day, everyone was watching, but for all the wrong reasons. The room fell silent. They said I didn't belong here, that my success was luck or corruption. But the truth is, I worked harder because I didn't belong. And that's what makes so many of us dangerous to broken systems. We don't play by their limits. Her words struck deep. I was accused. I was shamed. But when you lose everything, you learn something powerful. No one can fire your purpose. No one can cancel your truth. You only lose when you stop standing for it. The crowd rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall. For the first time, Maya didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like a force. As she stepped off stage, Janelle ran up and hugged her. You did it, girl. You changed the game. Maya smiled through tears. No, she said softly. We did it. Every person who ever got ignored, underestimated, or silenced, this was for them. That night, she walked outside under the city lights, her mother's old pendant resting on her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. Because Maya Johnson, the daughter of a cleaning lady, the doctor they tried to erase, had done more than save a life. She had saved her own. And in doing so, she'd proven something powerful to the world. Even in a world ruled by power, money, and fear, truth, when spoken with courage, can still change everything. Months had passed since Maya Johnson's name had shaken the city. The hospital board had fallen. The corrupt donors had been exposed. And the world finally saw what Maya truly was. Not a pawn, not a scandal, but a symbol of integrity. Yet even after all the fame, the awards, the interviews, she still lived in the same small house with her mother, in the same quiet neighborhood that raised her. Because Maya never chased status. She chased purpose. That morning, as she sat by the kitchen window with a cup of tea, sunlight spilling across her face, her mother smiled from across the table. You look peaceful, Elaine said. I haven't seen that in a long time. Maya smiled softly. For the first time, Mama, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The television hummed in the background. A news anchor's voice echoed through the room. Dr. Maya Johnson, the whistleblower who exposed the largest medical corruption scandal in the city, has announced her new initiative, the Johnson Foundation for Honest Medicine, dedicated to helping underprivileged students become doctors. Elaine looked at her daughter with teary eyes. You're building something good, baby. Maya nodded. It's not just for me. It's for every person who was told they don't belong. She looked out the window, remembering her first day at that hospital, how the security guard had almost stopped her from entering because she didn't look like a doctor. Now, that same hospital was rebuilding under a new name, the Johnson Medical Center for Ethics and Innovation. A small plaque by the entrance read, in honor of those who heal with truth. But even as the world celebrated her, a part of Maya's heart still carried a memory of the man whose world had started it all, Don Vito. One rainy evening, months later, Maya received a letter, no return address, only her name in bold handwriting. Inside was a short note. A second chance is the greatest medicine. Thank you for mine. Vito. And tucked beside was a photo, Don Vito and his son, both smiling at a medical relief camp, surrounded by children. She blinked, stunned. The Mafia boss who once ruled with fear was now using his wealth to fund free clinics across poor neighborhoods. In the corner of the photo, a banner read, "Healing, not hurting." Maya didn't know whether to cry or smile. Life had a strange way of turning enemies into lessons. That night, she sat by her desk, looking at the photo under the soft glow of a lamp. Maybe, she thought, the greatest miracles don't happen in operating rooms. They happen in hearts. Weeks later, she stood on the stage of a grand university auditorium, facing hundreds of students, young, eager faces, many of them looking just like she once did, full of dreams but burdened by doubt. She took a deep breath and began. When I started my journey, she said, I was told I didn't belong. Not because I wasn't capable, but because the world had already decided who belonged and who didn't. She paused, scanning the crowd. But I learned something. You don't need permission to become great. You just need conviction. The students leaned forward, hanging on to every word. I was a cleaning lady's daughter. My mother's hands scrubbed hospital floors while mine held textbooks. Every night she'd tell me, keep your hands clean, but never your dreams small. And when the world tried to bury me under lies, I used the dirt they threw at me to plant roots. The crowd erupted in applause, some wiping tears. In the front row sat Elaine, holding her camera, smiling with pride that only a mother could carry. Maya continued, her voice steady and powerful. They said I was lucky, but luck doesn't stay. Work does. Faith does. And courage, that's the only heartbeat that never flatlines. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. Reporters rushed to the stage. Students asked for autographs, and the dean handed her a Medal of Honor, not for medicine, but for moral courage. Later that night, as the applause faded and the lights dimmed, Maya stepped outside alone. The air was cool, filled with a hum of distant city life. She looked up at the stars, the same stars she used to stare at as a little girl when she dreamed of becoming a doctor. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Quite the speech, doctor. She turned. It was Marco, Don Vito's former bodyguard. He looked different now. No suit, no shadow of the Mafia. Just a man in a simple coat, holding an envelope. Mr. Vito wanted you to have this, he said quietly. She hesitated before taking it. How is he? Marco smiled faintly. He's trying to make peace with his past. He said you reminded him what it means to save a life for real. Then he nodded respectfully and walked away. Maya opened the envelope. Inside was a single check, blank, signed by Don Vito, and a note that read, build something that lasts longer than my sins. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't want his money, but she knew what she'd do with it. A month later, construction began on a new wing of her foundation, the Vito Center for Youth Recovery and Rehabilitation, offering free therapy and education to teens from underprivileged backgrounds. It was her way of turning darkness into light. Years passed. Maya became one of the most respected voices in global medicine. She traveled the world, speaking about ethics, innovation, and equality. Everywhere she went, she carried her mother's old pendant, a symbol of humility and hope. One evening, after giving a lecture in Geneva, she called her mother. Guess what, Mama? She said, smiling through the phone. They offered me a seat on the World Medical Council. Elaine's voice cracked with emotion. Oh, baby, your name's going to echo in places I never even dreamed of. Maya laughed softly. Our name, Mama. Ours. There was silence on the other end. Then her mother whispered, I told you. Scrub floors with pride or save lives with purpose. It's all the same if your heart's clean. Maya closed her eyes. You were right. Always. That night, as she stood on her hotel balcony, watching the lights dance across the lake, she thought back to everything. The blood, the sirens, the scandal, the shame, the fight. It all led here. She realized she didn't just save a boy that night. She'd save herself, and maybe in some strange way, even Don Vito too. Because sometimes the most powerful cure isn't medicine, it's redemption. And as the wind brushed her face, Maya whispered to herself, if a cleaning lady's daughter can change the world, then anyone can. The city lights flickered like stars below, and somewhere in the distance, a heartbeat of hope began again.